There are people who walk through life carrying responsibilities that nobody ever officially gave them. They become the mediator during conflict, the one who checks if everyone is okay, the one who notices tension before anyone else is aware of it, the one who quietly adjusts themselves to keep situations running smoothly. They remember birthdays. They solve problems before they become emergencies. They absorb stress that does not belong to them. And over time, this becomes so automatic that they rarely stop to question it. They simply assume this is what caring looks like. That being a good person means paying attention to everyone else's emotional state. That if something goes wrong and they could have prevented it, then somehow they are responsible. And because this way of living often looks generous from the outside, very few people ever ask what it costs. But the cost is usually enormous. Because eventually, a person begins carrying weight that was never theirs to carry in the first place. And the strange thing is that most of them do not remember choosing this role. It feels older than choice, more familiar than a decision, almost like a reflex, because in many cases it began long before adulthood, long before they understood what responsibility even meant. Psychologists have observed something interesting about children who grow up in emotionally unpredictable environments. When a child cannot control what happens around them, they often start trying to control what they can. And one of the first things they attempt to manage is emotional atmosphere. The child begins paying attention. Who is angry? Who is upset? Who needs comforting? Who might create conflict? Who might need help? It was never about control over others. It's about stability. The child learns that if they can anticipate enough, fix enough, maybe things will stay stable. Maybe everyone will be okay. And when life feels unpredictable, the mind begins looking for ways to make it feel less so. Responsibility becomes one of those ways, because responsibility creates the feeling that something can be done, that attention matters, that effort matters, that enough awareness might keep things from falling apart. And over time, the line between what belongs to the child and what belongs to the world around them begins to fade. And the responsibility that once felt protective begins following them into adulthood. The child grows up. The situation changes, but the habit of carrying responsibility only deepens. Now they are 25, 30, 40, still monitoring everyone, still carrying things that do not belong to them, still feeling guilty for outcomes they never controlled, still believing they should somehow know how to make everything better. And because they have been doing it for so long, it feels normal. They rarely notice how different their experience is from everyone else's. Most people see a problem and ask, "What can I do?" People who feel responsible for everyone often ask, "What should I have done differently?" Even when the problem was never theirs, even when the outcome was never under their control. There is also something important happening underneath this pattern that many people miss. Responsibility creates purpose, and purpose feels good. If people need you, then your role is clear. If you are solving problems, then you know where you stand. If everyone depends on you, then your value feels visible, which means responsibility can become emotionally addictive. Not because the person enjoys carrying burdens, quite the opposite. They're usually exhausted by it. But because being needed can quietly become tied to feeling worthy. And once that connection forms, rest becomes difficult, boundaries become difficult, saying no becomes difficult, because every refusal feels like a failure. Every unmet need feels selfish. Every limitation feels like letting someone down, even when the expectation only exists inside their own mind. Over time, this creates a very specific kind of loneliness. Because people who feel responsible for everyone are often the people least likely to ask for help themselves. They know how to support, they know how to listen, they know how to show up. But receiving support feels unfamiliar. sometimes uncomfortable, because they have spent so much time in the role of caretaker that they no longer know what it feels like to simply be cared for. And eventually, something begins to crack. The energy runs out. The emotional resources run out. The constant monitoring becomes unsustainable. And the person discovers something they have spent years avoiding. Other people's emotions are not their responsibility. Other people's choices are not their responsibility. Other people's happiness is not their responsibility. This sounds obvious, but for someone who has spent decades carrying everyone else's emotional weight, it can feel almost revolutionary, because it requires accepting something uncomfortable. You cannot save everyone. You cannot fix everyone. You cannot prevent every disappointment. You cannot protect people from every consequence. The healthiest relationships are not built on one person carrying everyone. They are built on shared responsibility, shared effort, shared humanity. The person who feels responsible for everyone often imagines they are helping by carrying more than their share. But sometimes what they are actually carrying is the belief that other people are less capable than they truly are. Sometimes helping means trusting people with their own lives, their own growth. Because caring for people and carrying people are not the same thing. One creates connection, the other creates exhaustion. And the people who finally learn the difference often experience something unexpected: relief. Not because they stop caring, but because they finally stop confusing care with responsibility. They discover that compassion does not require ownership, that love does not require sacrifice at every moment, that support does not require self-abandonment, and that being a good person was never supposed to mean carrying the weight of the entire room. Sometimes the most difficult thing a person can learn is also the simplest. You can care deeply about people without becoming responsible for their lives, and that lesson changes everything.